So, this is probably one of the most important things that you as individuals and anybody who is self-employed in particular needs to understand. But then your individual consumers, self-employed, W-2 doesn't matter, also needs to understand this, and they make, I see, lots of mistakes. This is why I have this credit card statement up here so you can see some key things. Other than the fact that this card is virtually maxed out, the credit line's 15.8 and they owe 15.3, so they owe almost all of it. That's bad for credit scores, right? But guess what? This particular person, this does not have a negative impact on their credit score, hardly at all. I'm going to show you why. The first thing, though, that you need to understand is there are two imperative dates, or two super important dates. One is the close date. Up here it's June 18th. The other is the payment due date, July 13th. So the very first thing that you and your buyers need to understand is payment due date, July 13th. I see a lot of confusion over this. People think, this is a myth, I've got 30 days. So long as I pay that within 30 days of the due date, it's not going to report bad on my credit. Okay? I had a CPA. She thought she had a 700 plus. I pay all my bills every month. It's automatic. It goes through my bill pay. I pay them every month. Don't ever miss a lick. Great. Pulled her credit report. She was like 626. Okay? And that's because she misunderstood payment due date. Listen, when your credit card company says payment due date, you know what they mean?
It's due.
It's due. You don't have 30 days to pay it. As a matter of fact, the next most important date is to understand the close date. It's the 18th. So this is what you have 30 days from before they're going to report you delinquent. So it's June 18th. You only have till July 18th. Payments due July 13th. How many days do you have? 5. So if you fudge it, not only does it bump your interest rate, you get late fees and all that other stuff that credit card companies like to do to you. If you go 6 days, you're going to be reported over 30 days late on this credit card. Okay? So it's not this that you have 30 days, not the due date. It's 30 days from your close date, statement cycle date. I'm going to use different words, but usually it's close date on your credit card statement. Okay? So the other thing to know, this is how this person manages this, and this is great for contractors who have very large cash flows and they use their credit card to charge everything. So if you're doing this because you're spending a lot of money for open houses and business promotion stuff and you know you got a close coming up, here's how you charge up a credit card and not let it hurt your credit score. And that is you pay real close attention to the close date. It's the 18th. So if by the 18th I have a payment posted to my account, then they report the balance it was on the 18th. So how does that work? Charged a bunch of stuff, was getting all reimbursed, take $10,000, make a $10,000 payment on the 18th. Now I only owe $5,000 and my limit is $15,000. I owe a third of my balance. Now on the 19th, I start charging it all back up again. Okay? Contractors, I talk to any self-employed people that are contractors, I do this a lot with. You can talk to them about how to manage those funds. And then they get to earn rebates and they get to earn trips and they get to do all kinds of things and they still can manage and maintain their credit score. So when they need to lease a piece of equipment, not a problem. Okay? So that's why these two dates are imperative to know and to understand. You can charge up your card, you can utilize it if it's your favorite card, you're getting points, or you're getting air miles to go to Hawaii, whatever you're doing, just make sure you are going to be able to pay it down by the close date. Now if you can't, just understand that that's going to hurt your credit score and you need to be okay with that and plan accordingly. But if you need to maintain and manage your credit score, pay it by the due date and then use it again. So some clients, they're not contractors, they're not self-employed. This is a W-2 employee. They know when they're getting paid. They know when it's due. They can put their groceries, they can put their insurance on it, they can put the utility bills, they can use their credit card for everything, and when they get paid, just make sure they pay it down by the due date, and it's going to report the lower balance. Okay? But don't pay it on the 17th and then charge everything on the 18th. You've got to wait to start charging until the day after or so. And that takes them 2 to 5 days before the new balance is reported on a bureau and affects their credit score. Okay? But they still go by the balance at the close of business on close date. And that's what they report. And then your payment due date is not 30 days from that. So these are important things to remember when you're managing and working with your credit. Okay? Does that help a little bit? Does anybody know all of that?
Nope.
Okay. One other thing, well, I'll get in here a rule. This managing your score. We're going to dig a little bit deeper now as to how to manage your score. I call this my $10 rule. double-digit fidget, whatever you want to call this, okay? So the $10 rule is specifically tied to revolving credit cards. And I'm going to use one that I know this happens with quite frequently, and that's a company called Capital One. Has anybody heard of Capital One? Okay. So I think everybody should use this for all of their credit cards unless they know otherwise, okay? Unless they know they report accurately. What happens with credit cards, that if we went back and you looked at that close date, if you have a zero balance at close date, okay, so let's say you charged up $1,000 on your Capital One and you paid it off on the 16th. Close date was the 18th, right? So that close date rolls by, you owe nothing. They report nothing. That doesn't sound like a problem. You owe nothing, they report nothing. But what I'm saying is they don't report new information to the credit bureau. So if the previous month you owed $1,000 through the close date and they reported you owe $1,000, Chris pulls your credit report. Capital One, $1,000. The next time, 2 months later, you find the house you're going to cut, he pulls your credit report. You paid it off before the close date. So you owed zero. Capital One system, they're not trying to be mean, they just don't report anything. There's nothing to report as far as the way their programming works. So it won't show anything. So it still shows when he pulls your credit report, guess what? $1,000 balance. Now it says it hasn't been reported for 2 months because it was 2 months ago you had the $1,000. This month you paid it to zero, but you paid it to zero before the close date. They don't report any new information. Now, anybody with sense could say, well, look, it's been 2 months since they reported the $1,000 balance. What's the new balance? Let's find out. It's not that easy. It still has a negative impact on your credit score. Okay, so even if you, Frank did it, and he's getting a loan, and he gives a statement to Chris to show, I owe zero, look at this. Chris can then take that $1,000, which is a $15 a month payment, out of his ratios. It's going to help your ratios a lot, but the worst thing is you've maxed out your $1,000 Capital One card, and it's hurting your credit score. So what I ask people to do is pay the balance $990. Leave $10. 10 to $50, doesn't matter, but I call it 10. If you leave $10, you're forcing them to report, and two things happen. Chris pulls your credit report again, because now you've actually gone into contract, and he sees, oh, he only owes $10. That's less than 1 month worth of payment, not really going to hurt your ratios, and your credit score goes up, because you owe $10 on a $1,000 limit. So you owe 1%, right? Okay, so that's my $10 rule that's going to help you manage your score. Close accounts. We've already talked about this. Do not close accounts. As a matter of fact, I actually had a client who had a JCPenney account. This is why I use JCPenney a lot, because this was an actual experience. Came to me. I don't remember the exact credit scores. This was a number of years ago. He got it in his early 20s. He's in his 40s now, right? And there has not been any activity on this card for like 10 years. It's just, I see it on his credit report. There's no balance. Last report date was 10 years ago approximately. That was quite a while. And he was at 678 for the program. He needed to be at 700 to get the kind of loan he wanted or needed to get. I looked at that. I said, go buy your wife a blouse. He's like, what? I said, go to Penny's and buy your wife a blouse. Buy her something. I don't care. Just go buy something. Well, I don't have the credit card anymore. No problem. It's a retail store. Show them your driver's license. If they say, oh, thank you very much, Mr. Gray, we'd love to go ahead and put this on your account, then proceed with the transaction. If they say, well, you're not in our system anymore, let's have you fill out a new application, then go, well, no, that's okay. Here, use my MasterCard. You don't want a new inquiry, I told them on your report. You don't want a new account. But if it's still open, and on the credit report it tells us, it shows it as an open account, open revolving account, then go ahead and charge that. He did that. We waited until his statement close date. His score jumped over 40 points. I don't remember the exact number, but it was over 40 points. And the reason for that was he had 20 plus years of history on a perfect pay account. So what happens, not only do you not want to close them, but you want to utilize them approximately once a year. So you got all these extra credit cards, instead of closing them, set them aside, put them in a lockbox, do whatever you want to do with them. And once a year, swap out your card. If you always use your Capital One card, for a couple months, put the Capital One away and pull out one of the other cards and use it. If you've got a store card you haven't used in a while, you don't ever shop at Kohl's, go to Kohl's and buy a little something. Buy yourself a new pair of socks. Do something and let the activity happen on the card so that it keeps it fresh, it keeps it reporting. Because after 12 months of no activity, it comes out of your credit score also. It's almost as bad as closing the account, but not quite. Once you close it, you can't do anything about it, okay? But if it's inactive or closed, it's not helping your credit score, no matter how perfect the credit payment history was, okay? Payoff collections, another myth. Some loan officers, I've heard it recently. Chris has probably heard it. Oh, you need to go pay off all your collections and that way your credit score will go up. Well, if the collections are over 12 months old, worse if they're over 24 months old, it may actually drop their credit score. Because if there's been no new collections, let's go out 24 months. Let's say they had a medical issue 2-3 years ago, they had some medical collections, and they never paid them, but there's been no new activity on those accounts. They just were reported as collections and they just sat there and they're over 2 years old. And they go pay it. That's a good thing to do, right? But now that collection company reports this month that you paid off that collection. Now it's a current active collection. It's zero balance, but it was over 24 months old, now it's current. Okay? So whether they pay off collections or not, again, they need to get to Chris first, they need to get to who they're working with first, and get that evaluated as to whether they should or shouldn't. There are some other rules on the loan side, which again, Chris will know better, that they can talk about. Certain limits, if you owe too much, you got to pay some off anyway, you have to make payment arrangements, things like that. But as far as your credit score goes, you may or may not want to pay off collections. It could actually do more harm than good. Okay? Using credit monitoring. Anybody heard of Credit Karma? Right? Freecreditreport.com. Credit check. I mean, there's dozens of them out there, right? And I want to talk about something like Credit Karma. All of these, it's virtually worthless. Virtually. So there is a small amount of value to it. Okay, it's like virtually spotless for Cascade. I'm going to get in trouble on this video for using all these name brands, aren't I? They're going to sue me. But it's virtually useless, okay? There's a couple reasons. Number one, there's a couple different scoring models that are utilized out there, okay? So the scoring model that most of them use is a consumer credit score, which is very representative of the FICO credit score for mortgage lending. It's very similar. Hopefully someday this will be addressed, but they use the same scoring range too, from 350 to 850. Now, if they use the scoring range from 0 to 100, it would sure be a whole lot easier for the consumer to tell, right? That it's just an indication. That's the only purpose credit monitoring does when it comes to your credit score, and that is it's an indication of the approximate direction your credit score is going. But it isn't what your credit score is. And all of them have in fine print that they're using their own model. They're not using the FICO scoring model in order to give you your credit score. They're using their own model. Go ahead.
So I use Credit Karma. I don't pay for monitoring, but you can go in and pull up a credit score just to see where you're at.
Right.
Does that hurt me to go to their website and pull up my score?
If they're not doing, you'll have to read it. Some of them, if they're not doing a direct inquiry and getting your FICO score, which typically they're not. If you're talking, you have the app,
they're not.
And you just want to know it, it's basically a soft pull in essence.
Yes.
And so no, it does not hurt your credit score to do that. But that credit score you're looking at is not, if you're applying for a home loan, it is not going to be the same credit score that Chris looks at.
Okay.
And it's a complete misnomer. It is completely erroneous. It's kind of funny, the disclaimers, if you read the disclaimers, either they're very small print on the first page or you got to get into the FAQs and look at them. But you'll see that it actually blames the lender for not using their scoring model. But their scoring model is not a FICO score.
So I sometimes have lease applicants
Yes,
bring us a
that was
Credit
my
Karma
question. Right.
report. Is that completely bogus, or are we in the ballpark with a Credit Karma report?
I've seen a 40, 60, 80 point difference
Lower.
between the credit monitoring and their actual FICO
Lower
score.
than actual.
So it gives you an indication. I mean, if it's under 600, you probably don't want to waste money pulling their score, right? But it gives you an indication, and that's about all it does. Okay, it's a great, it's a tool. It's free, but it's not accurate. Okay, you had a question?
That was the same as that I use free credit, tell them to go to freecreditreport.com for leases and pull the lease and then send it along with the lease and.
Credit Karma will actually give them a score. It
Yeah.
may not be
So
the
does
same
free-
FICO, but
Right.
you do get a number.
So does free
Yeah.
credit.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to actually, my personal recommendation is myfico.com. You know why? Because Fair Isaacs owns the site. Okay, so number one, all the information on the site is accurate. Number two, you pay for it. You pay. So if you want to look at your actual 3 credit bureaus and your 3 FICO scores, it's approximately $60 to pull all 3 reports with credit scores. From there, every change that happens on your credit they take that as the baseline and they make the adjustments based on the FICO score model. It's probably the most accurate, but even they'll put a disclaimer that it's not actually your credit score, because it was when you initially sign up. When you initially sign up, it's taking what your credit report and your credit score was and then making adjustments based on the changes. Sorry about that. This thing locks me out. Again, a wonderful security feature.
Let me check the input real quick too.
It should.
You think that's gonna pull it back?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I know my
Yeah, it seems
password.
to go into sleep mode after about 5 minutes of inactivity, and there's no way to change that default setting.
No, usually I've been bumping the mouse, but. Okay. Oh, somebody had me turn my caps lock on, I forgot that. So yes, I'm blaming you for it.
I heard that.
Okay, so generally, credit monitoring, particularly if you're paying for it, is generally worthless. Okay, there are some exceptions to that. Again, I'm a big fan of myfico.com because that is the Fair Isaac's website, and that's where you're going to get the most accurate information, though the rest of them pretty much take the information from that anyway. Okay? So, let's talk about why you should monitor your credit. It's not so much for the credit score. The credit score is good. It's particularly if you know and you need to strategize and you're planning on buying a home, buying a car, you're planning on doing something, so sign up for it. Manage your credit score, see where it's at, and then don't sign up for it after that. People use credit monitoring, one of the things they're going to say, well, it's going to help you with identity theft. Okay, yes, but you don't need to pay for it. Okay, you can use a Credit Karma, but the best place to go if you want a credit report is ftc.gov. Okay? On that site, it is the only legitimate site where you get to pull your free credit report once a year. Okay? So I send everybody to ftc.gov. They have a specific site. I think it's it might be freeannualcreditreport.com. Or annualcreditreport.com. I don't utilize that. I send them to ftc.gov for two reasons. First is that's how they can get to the right one, but the second is there's a lot of good consumer information on there about credit scoring as well, and credit management and financial management. So it's a good resource to get clients to go take a look at. Okay, so should you monitor your credit report? Yes, once a year, pull your credit report, get it at ftc.gov. And what are you looking for? You're looking for accounts that you didn't know you had. That's indications of identity theft. If there's an account that's been opened that you didn't know, this is the time to watch that. There are inquiries that you didn't instigate. You're not the one who applied for a Lowe's credit card, but there's a credit card inquiry for Lowe's. That could be a problem. Address variances, job variances, sometimes if you've never lived there, maybe. But understand when somebody keys stuff into the bureaus, all they know, they're just basically a centralized place to gather data, right? And a whole lot of conditions have been put on them now so that they have to manage that data and have some accountability, but they don't know if you've applied for a loan someplace and the guy at the auto dealership, the finance guy, transposed your social security numbers, and it just happens to be somebody else. It is somebody else's social security number, so their information kind of starts to get cross-fed into yours sometimes, whether it be addresses or jobs. It's not usually the actual credit data as far as credit accounts that happens, but it can mess things up. If they spell your name wrong, transpose the numbers into social security numbers. Pretty important that people, when they enter that data to the bureaus, do it accurately, and if they don't, it will cause all kinds of interesting things to slide into your credit report. So the big things is inquiries that you didn't start or instigate, and are there accounts that you don't know about. So that's what you're going to look for. The other way to deal with identity theft is read your mail. It's one of the simplest things in the world you can do, because you're going to get a turn down letter, or you're going to get an acceptance letter, or you're going to get something that indicates there's a problem of an account that you didn't know about. So take a minute, get a letter opener, and slice everything open, and at least glance at it. That's my recommendation. I'm going to tell you in a minute how to reduce a lot of that junk mail, substantially, by at least 30% probably. Balance and reconcile your accounts. Now, I know all of us balance our checking account every month, right? What about our Visa account? Do we actually look at it? Do we actually pay attention and match up receipts and expenses on our Visa account to the statement that we get? I know a lot of people who don't. I know a lot of husbands and wives, I'm trying to be, politically correct here, who purchase things that their spouse never seems to know about because they don't look at the statement, they just pay it. Hey, if they've got a Victoria's Secret account, my wife can max out at any time she wants, no problem. But the rest of the stuff I watch. So really balance and reconcile all of your accounts. If you're not familiar with, you don't know how to do that, it's too tedious, learn how to use Quicken because you can download the transactions and balance it to the online balance. And it's a pretty simple process. You're just paying attention to what came through and what payments, and it works pretty easily. So that's going to help you also. If I got a call, has anybody ever got this call? I got a call from my credit union. Mr. Plant, are you in Brazil? No, I'm here. I just answered my home phone. I'm not in Brazil. Well, somebody's trying to use your card in Brazil. We already authorized X small, it was under $50. Now they're trying to buy something for $300 or $400. So if they hadn't gotten a hold of me, I'd have seen that on my statement if I reconcile my Visa statement. If I don't, then I might not have noticed a $50 charge or some odd dollars or a smaller charge. So balance and reconcile your accounts. Watch your card. Does anybody know what I mean when I say watch your card? Keep it in sight all the time. Do not hand your card to somebody, waiter, waitress, and let them walk off with it. Well, how do you do that? You're at Fleming's and they always walk off with it, right? Well, if you're at a reputable place that you know and you've been at before and it's never been a problem, you're probably okay. But even then, it's a little risky. What I tend to do, this is my own personal practice, is I watch where the waiter or waitress is going, where they usually all have their little kiosks where they're going to go put in the orders and then run the charge cards. And I see them over there. When they bring the bill, I walk up and I hand them the bill. I thought I'd save you a few steps. Is that okay? And then run it right while I'm standing there and hand me my card back. So if you're not familiar with the place, do not let your card out of your sight. I also recommend that you don't use your debit card in places that you're not familiar with. Simply, well, I want to use my debit card because I don't want a credit card bill. Well, the problem with the debit card is it comes out of your checking account. And as many Americans, if you're living paycheck to paycheck and they take out $300 that you didn't plan on, that can be a problem. If it's on a charge card, then you can call the charge card company. They're going to put that charge on hold. They're going to investigate it. You're not going to pay interest on it until it's been verified that it's a legitimate charge or not. They do the same thing with a debit card, but you still don't have the money until they're done investigating it usually. So that can be a problem. So I suggest that you have a credit card that you use in places that you're not familiar with. Debit cards I use my debit card. I use it to pay for disposable stuff such as gas and groceries. I'm right there. I'm running the card. I'm in complete control of the card myself. That's what I use my debit card for. Just some suggestions. But if you paid attention to these things, you will pretty much, unless you are specifically targeted, you will catch and or avoid any issues with identity theft. Okay? I just got a letter the other day. There's a newsletter from my loan officer, Jeff Byther, that had some of these tips on the back of it, which is written by somebody else. So these are common tips that if people would be aware of these things is huge. By the way, go to Walmart, get yourself a $14.99 or $19.99 cross shredder and shred all this mail you just opened. It's not hard to do. There's no reason not to do it. And if you do it, guess what? They don't get your name. They don't get your address easily. They're not going to go through your trash and easily come up with identifying information that they can use against you. Okay? So get a shredder. I shred almost everything except for the blatant advertised postcards. So, because your name and address, it is public information. But I don't want to make it easy on them. Okay? Let's see. This is the screenshots from one of the credit reporting companies. I don't know if you can read it. The credit monitoring benefit may only be available for 5 days during the trial period, since enrollment can take up to 2 days. You may cancel your trial membership anytime during the first 7 days without charge. Calculated on the plus score model, the plus score model, okay, not FICO score model. Your Experian credit score indicates your relative credit risk for educational purposes and is not the score used by lenders.
Wow.
Okay? Almost all of them have some kind of disclaimer on this. I've never actually had somebody in class go, yeah, right, Daniel, prove it to me. However, just in case somebody was thinking it, here you go. That's an excerpt right from the screen. So again, Federal Trade Commission. Lenders, and this is another statement from a different one. Lenders and insurers use several different credit scoring models, so don't be surprised if your lender gives you a score that's different from the plus score. Just remember that your associated risk level is often the same, even if the number is not. For some consumers, however, the risk assessment of a plus score could vary, sometimes substantially from a lender's score. If the lender's score is lower than your plus score, it is possible that this difference can lead to higher interest rates and sometimes credit denial. It matters because if you need a 620 and you have a 619, it's a problem. Okay, if you need a 760 and you have a 759, it's a problem. It does make a difference. So they do put these disclaimers on there. Okay, they just aren't very big and they're hard to find. The top one, I actually did have to go into the FAQs. It was nowhere on the landing page, on any of the pages you would normally click through. I had to find that, and then I took a snippet of it. Okay, remind me about the 30% mail. So I'm going to help you reduce your junk mail by at least 30% here shortly, okay? 10-year mistake, bankruptcies, okay? Have any of you ever had a buyer who's been able to qualify for a home loan and they had a bankruptcy? Okay? Happens fairly frequently. There's a lot of fear-mongering and misinformation about bankruptcies. Does anybody kind of know a little bit where bankruptcy law kind of comes from? Okay. We actually brought it to this country from England. It's an old English law. And my understanding, do not quote me on this, I'm only about 60% sure of this, is it had to do with a way to help eliminate and cut down on the debtor's prison, which was costing the crown a fortune. But the law is actually somewhat biblically based. It comes from something called the Year of Jubilee, where every 7 years all lands had to be returned to the proper families and debt had to be forgiven. The Hebrew people actually didn't do a lot of credit extension for that very reason, or if they did, it was pretty short term. Okay? So it is actually biblically based. It is designed to not have people be oppressed by creditors. So when somebody files bankruptcy, this is an area that there's a lot of, oh, woe is me, I'm so miserable, I had to file bankruptcy. I don't let my clients talk like that, and Chris doesn't. If you had a problem, and this is how lending looks at it, mortgage lending, you had a problem. Something went wrong. Sickness, loss of job, divorce. We may not agree with the problem. It may have been a weak reason, but whatever it is caused you a problem. You stood up and you addressed it, and you eliminated it, and you've moved on. If we can see that pattern, then you're going to get a loan. Okay? If you had problems, you filed Chapter 7 and you eliminated the problem, and you moved on and reestablished yourself, after particular time frames, depending on what kind of borrowing you want to do, you're going to be fine, and we will give you a mortgage loan in the industry. We recognize that. What we don't like to see is the borrower who had, in 2011, had all kinds of lates, blah, blah, and in 2012, they had a few lates, and in 2013, that whole bunch again, and they always have a reason, but the bottom line is their pattern is that a matter of irresponsibility in regards to how they pay their creditors back. That's more of a problem than bankruptcy. It really isn't a 10-year mistake. If you handle it properly, it's about a 2 to 5 year mistake maximum. A Chapter 7 is. Does everybody know the difference between a Chapter 7 and a Chapter 13? Okay, Chapter 7 is kind of a total liquidation. You're going, I don't have a dime, I can't pay anybody, and nobody gets anything. The Chapter 13 is the repayment plan, where a trustee looks over your credit, your debt, and they have you make a payment to the bankruptcy court, who then distributes it to the trustee for a particular set period of time, typically a 5-year repayment plan. The Chapter 13 actually is a 3 to 5 to 7 year mistake, because while you're going through that, all the creditors still have the right to report you as paying delinquently, paying late. So it still really hurts your credit score while you're going through the Chapter 13. Generally speaking, I'm not an attorney, but generally speaking, you really want a good attorney, not an $800 bankruptcy attorney. If somebody's got to go through this, I will tell clients, if you want a good attorney, and it's going to cost you $1,500 to $2,500 for somebody who's got a lot of businesses, maybe $5,000 to file bankruptcy. But you want a good attorney who can walk you through the entire process. You don't want to do a 13 unless you absolutely have to, because it stretches it out much longer. Chapter 7 is almost always the best. People choose a 13 again because of guilt and fear-mongering. They want to at least try to pay their creditors back. But the bottom line is, you can't, so don't even try. It's an oppression that, yes, you made some mistakes, yes, you made some bad decisions, you recognize them, let's move on. Okay? Hey, by the way, the creditors know. I mean, when you've got a $10,000 Capital One card and you get a pre-approved $20,000 American Express card next month, and the next month you get a $20,000 Citibank card, okay, they looked at your credit report. They know that you already have $50,000 worth of available revolving credit, and you work at McDonald's, okay? So I don't feel real sorry for them. Not to mention everybody else who's paying the interest rates they're paying, they're not losing money. Look at Wall Street. These banks are not losing money. I'm not justifying bankruptcy. I'm not justifying bad decisions at all. But make the decision, do what you need to do, and move on. If you do that, and you do it properly, it can be as little as a 2-year mistake. You only have to disclose, for example, the creditors that you owe money to. Don't owe money over here. So you don't have to disclose your Kohl's credit card. You don't owe them money. Kohl's doesn't find out that you filed bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is discharged. You still have a Kohl's account. If you do, they might find out and they might close it. You go to Kohl's and you start charging stuff. You're reestablishing credit. You keep your car and you have car payments on it. You don't reaffirm it. That's a whole other conversation, reaffirmation versus not. People say you have to reaffirming it is when you come out of bankruptcy. If you've reaffirmed it, you have in essence agreed to sign a new promissory note and you are 100% legally liable for that. Most companies will not repossess your car just because you don't reaffirm it. They may threaten to. I know there are a couple of companies that will take it back. Let them if they're going to do that. But by not reaffirming it, you literally legally do not owe the debt once it's discharged. So you have a car, you owe $10,000 on your Lexus that you've paid $30,000 down on. You want to keep it because you need a reliable vehicle. You can still make the $350 payment a month because you don't have the other debt. No problem. It's easy for you. You don't reaffirm it. You continue to make the payment. Guess what Chris and I get to see? You've reestablished credit because you're still making the payment. Okay. Now the nice thing about not reaffirming the debt, the bankruptcy attorneys and the trustees might shoot me for saying this. Again, you've got me on video. But the nice thing about not reaffirming the debt, and let's say a year from now something else heinous happens and you lose your job again and now you can't make the $350 Lexus payment and you're going to have to move back in with your parents as a 50-year-old. Guess what? You hand them the keys to the car and it does not have any negative impact on your credit report. Why? You don't legitimately owe the debt. It was discharged in bankruptcy. So as far as the courts and the creditors are concerned, you owe zero. You're volunteering to continue to pay so that you can continue to drive the car. Okay? So that's why you don't want to reaffirm debt. And these are things that I talk to borrowers about occasionally. They have questions about what they can do to reestablish. Secured credit cards, credit unions, almost all of them in the area will offer a secured credit card. Or they'll do a share loan and they'll report that to the bureaus. A share loan is, you give them $1,000 and put it in a savings account, they give you a $1,000 loan. Right? They take the payments, by the way, out of the savings account automatically. So you're reestablishing credit. This is where a Chapter 7 bankruptcy can be a 2-year mistake if it's done properly. If you leave yourself a way to reestablish credit. Okay? I've seen credit scores go, and you're going to love this. Okay, credit scores go from 350 to 850, right? Somebody goes through bankruptcy, their credit score was, upper 6s, maybe low 7s. They go through the bankruptcy, their credit score drops to 560, right? And then 2 years later, by reestablishing credit, they're back up in the 700s. Okay. Also, when you see people credit scores lower than that, I've seen credit scores down to 520. Guess what? These people work hard for that. I'm not talking about people that file bankruptcy. I'm talking about people that diligently work to have a 520 or a 460 credit score. What do I mean by that? They're changing their cell phone number, they're lying, they're hiding, they're ignoring calls, they're telling creditors things that they think the creditor wants to hear and then they don't deliver on it. I mean, they have to work hard to have a 480 credit score. This is not an easy thing to accomplish, okay? So don't feel sorry for them. They dug that hole on their own. Send them to ftc.gov. So I already talked about reestablishing a mistake, or reestablishing your credit. So keep one, the Kohl's card I mentioned, because you don't owe anything. Open one or do both and you're going to reestablish credit. So it does not become this heinous mistake. When it comes to buying a primary residence, you're 2 years out of a discharge with a VA, 3 years, 2 years with FHA, 3 years if it included a foreclosure. Conventional loan is, I believe it's 2 years also. Now, they just changed that. Chris, do you recall?
I am not 100% on that. I think you're right, though.
I think they've just lowered it to 2 years, it was 4. Now, to buy rental property, to buy a second home, it is 7 years on a conventional loan. And of course, you can't use FHA to buy a second home or buy rental property. So they have worked with the bankruptcy laws to make it so somebody can buy a home for their family and do it in a reasonable time frame after they've had a discharge of a bankruptcy. So 2 years, you've reestablished credit, you're into a home. Okay? Here we go. This is what you need to cut your mail down by 30% approximately, maybe longer. Optoutprescreen.com. All three credit bureaus will work together. This is a secure website that you go to. You put in your name, address, and social security number, and you choose to electronically opt out for 5 years. It takes a few days, but that will go to the three credit bureaus, and you will no longer get solicitations for credit cards in the mail. I don't know if you know this, but one of the ways the credit bureaus, this is the primary way they earn money, is by making the data they've collected available for a price, okay? So let's say that Chase is going to open a new branch in your new subdivision or in the area. What they want to do is they're going to ask Experian or TransUnion or Equifax or all three of them. They're going to say, this is our profile. We want people that are buying in this neighborhood because we know the price range, so we know the income they're going to have. And we want them that have at least X credit score, and so they get a mailing list. And so then they mail out to you. It's a soft pull. It's an internal inquiry into their data. It's not even technically a pull. But they're going into their database, and they're going to give that mailing list, in essence, out to Chase or whoever wanting it, and they're going to solicit you. Okay? By going to optoutprescreen.com, you're going to eliminate that. You can electronically opt out so that they will no longer include your name in that mailing list. Now, the flip side is true. You can also electronically opt in. So for a young person trying to establish credit that wants those offers, they could go here and opt in. But in most cases, people, by the time they're paying attention, just want to opt out. You can also, it gives you instructions to mail to the bureaus a permanent lifetime opt-out. It's so easy to do. I pop on every once in a while and do it for my wife and I when I think about it. So I probably do it more than once every 5 years. It's probably every 2 or 3 or 4 years where I go on and I'll just do it. I've got our social security numbers in front of us. So I've never done the permanent write-in. I just go on and do it electronically for 5 years. So the other thing that happens is if you tell your borrowers about it, if they've already had an inquiry done by a loan officer, I don't know if you know this, but that is more data collected. So a mortgage loan inquiry comes in on your borrower, and they're going to start getting solicitations from mortgage loan officers who pay for leads. Okay? You want to see a borrower get confused, let them get half a dozen phone calls from lenders quoting them anywhere from 2.95 to 4.25 for a mortgage loan. So there are rules as to how lenders quote mortgage rates over the phone, but they got to get caught. So they don't follow them. So they will many times say things just to draw your borrower in to get them to do an application. 2.95 is not a real rate. I pulled that off the top of my head, which is what I think most of these telephone soliciting loan officers do. They don't even look at a rate sheet. Whatever it takes to get them to fill an application, that's what they're after. And then sometime down the road, they break the real news to them as far as what their rate's actually going to be. Again, there are rules that's supposed to prevent them from doing that, but they have to get caught, reported. How will this information help you do more or better business? First of all, I mentioned earlier, it's going to help you personally manage your credit score. It's going to potentially reduce some of the costs and expenses that you have, so that takes a little bit of burden off of you. The second thing is, has anybody learned anything today?
Yes.
Okay. So do you realize that somebody with a low credit score probably earned the low credit score? Okay. Don't spend a lot of time spinning your wheels with those people. Okay. I'm not saying don't be empathetic, but simply don't ever be sympathetic. I think, has anybody ever heard Zig Ziglar talk about the difference between sympathy and empathy? Okay. Just so you know, sympathy is we're on a cruise ship and you're leaning over the rail puking your guts out. And sympathy is me leaning over the rail puking my guts out with you, right? Empathy is, hey, sorry you feel that way, I'll go get you a cold towel and put it on your neck to help you feel better, okay? So be empathetic, but don't be sympathetic. Don't jump into their situation with them. You cannot fix them, okay? Send them to Chris. Chris says they have a 520 credit score. You go, Frank, it's really been nice to know you. I'm going to put you in my database. I'm here for any questions. Work with Chris and see how we can help you, and when you're ready, let me know. And move on to the next buyer. Don't sit there and try to milk that one and try to make something happen and refer Frank to 14 different lenders who are going to tell him the same thing, okay? You have a lender who says, well, we can do down to 580 credit scores. Sure they can, on a manual underwrite with FHA. Guess what? Manual underwrite means I look at the FHA book. You know what the FHA book says? No collections and no lates in the last 12 months. If they have a credit score down to 580, what's likely that they have? collections and late payments in the last 12 months. They're not going to get the loan. So, while it's not false advertising for a lender to say, we do these loans down to this, it's misleading because the fact of the matter is they're probably not going to be able to do the loan. Okay? There are exceptions to that, and the primary exception is if identity theft, for example, happened and it's legitimate, then there's going to be a police report, not just them saying I had identity theft. There's going to be erroneous stuff on their credit report, and literally we get to throw the credit score out because it's completely wrong, right? And then we do a manual underwrite, we've got police reports, we've got documentation saying this isn't theirs, this isn't theirs, this isn't theirs. Oh, this car loan is theirs. Oh, that's perfect pay. That's great. Okay? So the last piece of information I want to leave you on this credit scoring is, has anybody heard about some of the new credit scoring they're going to be bringing in and doing? Okay, it's still pretty much being developed from what I've been able to assess at this point, but they are going to start bringing things in for people who aren't users of credit cards, where they're going to add things like their rental history, how they pay their insurance bill, how they pay their cell phone bill. Some of the cell phone companies like Verizon are already reporting to bureaus anyway. So some of that stuff is going to, the livelihood kinds of things, utility bills are going to start feeding in. And as that data becomes available to the bureaus, it will start helping the people who don't have and don't want to use regular credit. They don't want to get a credit card, but if they happen to be with an electric company that reports the bureaus, that's going to start helping them develop a credit score also. So that's in the works. It's going to take a while because all these companies got to start feeding the data to the bureaus, and the bureaus will start adjusting their credit scoring model, or not the bureaus, but FICO will be. By the way, FICO gets the reason those scores, by the way, on the other things aren't FICO scores is because those scores cost money. Fair Isaacs has that scoring model trademarked, so they don't just give it out. It has to be paid for. So if it's free, guess what? It's probably not your real credit score. Okay. Any questions about this?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Companies that say I'll fix your credit.
Excellent.
Is that a good or bad thing?
Yes and no. That was helpful, wasn't it? Here's the thing. Most of the companies that do credit repair, what they're going to do is in essence harass the credit bureaus. They're doing this based on laws and rules passed by how credit bureaus are supposed to do business. And that is the credit bureaus, before they report negative information, are supposed to go through a certain number of steps. They're supposed to contact you. They're supposed to give you a chance to dispute it and all these kinds of things. They don't usually do all of those things. Creditors, before they turn you over and report your collection, they're supposed to send you a collection notice. But who says, for a lot of people, if they've moved, they're apartment renters, they've changed address, they don't get those notices, even if they did send them. So there's really not a huge paper trail there. So what credit repair companies do is they write letters, and they dispute accounts. Okay? And in that dispute, then, the credit bureau has a certain period of time to research that information. I believe it's 45 days now. It was 30, but I think they've extended it. And if they can't verify that information or they find out it's erroneous, they are required to take it off the credit report. Here's what happens. They write to JCPenney's, who says you have lates. JCPenney's doesn't respond for 60 days, but 30 to 45 days later, they take the late off of your Penny's account. 70 days later, Penny says, well, here's the information. No, they were late. It's back on your credit report. So does credit repair help? Not a lot. If it was erroneous information from the start, yes. For the kind of credit repair I'm talking about. Now, there are other credit repair companies that they're very aggressive, and I know one in particular has attorneys that help work with him, but they got to pay for it. This is what I mean. I said something earlier. Somebody who wants to participate in getting their credit straightened out. That typically means, guess what? They're going to pay for it. The credit reports, when they get things fixed on them, they go to the borrower. The borrower has got to be proactive and send those to the credit repair company. So there is credit repair that works with the cooperation of the borrower. It can be beneficial, particularly if there's erroneous information. Okay?
So would it be better then to direct them to go to the Experian or the
They actually do the same thing. No.
They can go.
The best place to go, and some store credit cards will do this. Let's say that you have a late on your pennies. I pick on pennies, but I got this legitimate experience with them, either myself or with clients. And I don't know that Penny's does this anymore. I haven't had the chance to do this. I don't have a Penny's card right now, but they used to do, and some of these retail stores will do a one-time courtesy correction. So last month, I missed it. I was late. This month, I want to buy a house, but it dropped my score under the 720 that I needed. I call them up. Hey, I've been a customer for 20 years. I've never been late. You say I'm late, you're reporting me late. I don't think I was, because I pretty much pay through my bill pay. Is there anything you can do for me? Their first answer, of course, is no. Can I talk to a supervisor? Well, Mr. Plant, we'll do a one-time. You have been a customer, good customer, paying customer for a long time. I understand mistakes happen. Oh, you were in Aruba that week. Oh, well, okay, I get it. So we're going to do a one-time courtesy correction for you. It's possible that we're wrong. We may be wrong also, Mr. Plant. So it's many times the best way to eliminate things is to contact the creditor directly. It's dangerous on collections. If your borrower doesn't know what they're doing, they really should pay the money to hire a professional credit repair for some of that stuff. Because if they say or do the wrong thing, they could actually make their credit worse.
Right, because
So-
I know on some of the people that I've been working with, they've got creditors and then from way back, and then that gets sold or something to somebody else, because then there's all these people on their credit reports that they have not a clue, or
Right.
collection companies or whatever, and they keep, I guess, just,
Yeah, the collection goes stagnant after a while, and it doesn't actually have a negative impact on the report. So what they do is they sell it to somebody else who pays them pennies on the dollar for that account, and now it gets re-reported and it's refreshed.
right.
Chris, do you have a credit repair person that you refer people to?
You know, Chandra over there at the Belmont Franklin Group, she's been helping a lot of my clients and doing a pretty good job. Who do you use?
I don't remember his name. I've only sent one person to him, and actually,
Yeah.
David Mitchell in my office referred me to him, and
Oh, yeah?
he's
got
tenacious. He's tenacious. So
Right.
usually, a loan officer is going to have somebody that they've got
Mhm.
some experience that we could send to.
Yeah.
Even then, I always put the disclaimer: it's up to the borrower.
Because they always ask me, well, who would you recommend that I go to? It's like, I don't know.
Well, send him to Chris. Seriously, he'll guide them through that process. He won't do
Right.
it for them, but he'll guide them
I
through that.
usually tell them, just go Credit Karma, pull your credit, and then look and see who's there, contact the people individually, and go from there. Or contact the actual credit companies, Experian, TransUnion.
Again, that will go back to the myth that ways that we can pay off collections. You may not want to do that.
Right,
It may
right.
signal to them, hey, they're looking to do something. Let's re-report it, because now they're gonna have a reason. They want to improve their credit. They're gonna get a hold of us. They're gonna pay us. So you gotta be really careful with that stuff. I really suggest you send them to the loan officer. Let the loan officer help walk them through those landmines. So if they do the wrong thing, their credit score is gonna tank, and now they gotta wait.
Yeah, that's probably true, because people do that.
By the way, disputing accounts, which is the primary thing a lot of these credit repair companies do, they dispute the accounts. Guess what? The lending industry has caught on to that. Okay? We're sometimes a little slow, but we get there. Okay? Used to be a disputed account. When it said dispute, it comes out of the credit scoring model. Okay? So that's what people would do, is they would dispute the negative accounts, whether they really are disputing them or not. It's immaterial. It reports it's disputed. Their credit score literally goes up because it's no longer in the credit scoring model while it's in the dispute phase. Well, guess what? Before we can actually do your loan, we might take your application, but in order to submit to underwriting for final underwriting, you've got to remove the disputes. Then what happens to your credit score when you remove disputed accounts? It goes back down 9 times out of 10. Okay? So we've caught on. Like I said, it took us a little while, but we've decided that I'm talking about Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the mortgage lending industry as a whole. And so if there's a disputed account, it's got to be taken out of dispute in order to get your mortgage loan, so we can see what your real credit score is. Okay? So this has been, this is not updated, but I need to update this, but this is going to give you a good idea of what happens to somebody who's got a 740 credit score right here on just a regular purchase loan. You're going to notice this is at 60% loan to value or less, they get a credit in points of a quarter. At up to 75% though, they don't get anything just because they're paying their bills. That's what they're supposed to do. They're paying their bills and managing their money. But if they want to put less than 25% down, so they want to put 20% down, guess what? It costs them an extra quarter discount point. That's a 740 credit score or better. So guess what? Let's go down to a 680. This same person, if we're doing that, let me come over here. If they're doing a 10% down loan, 740 is a quarter at. If they're under 680, so 679, we have to add 2 1/4 discount points. Okay? So it's pretty important that they manage their credit. It's pretty important that they pay attention, that they talk to somebody ahead of time, because it will make a huge difference in the kind of rate and or the points they have to pay to close on that loan. What that means is To get the same rate as this person that's got a 740, they're going to write a check for 2.25%. And if they can't, we're going to move their rate up. And most of the time people can't or won't or shouldn't. It's better to move the rate up a little bit to help cover that. Okay? So it gets worse if there's cash out. We don't need to go into those though. But this is just so you can see. And every lender follows the same chart. It does vary from lender to lender based on their agreements with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the performance of their portfolio. There can be some extra charges to lenders who have poorly performing portfolios. So if lenders do a lot of high-risk loans and they have first payment defaults and payment delinquencies in their portfolio, believe me, Fannie Mae tracks all that stuff. The computer age has done wonders for them assessing that, and that lender is going to pay premiums to the base chart. This is the Fannie Mae base cost. At least this was a year ago. It has been updated, so I'll need to change that. But if a lender has additional fees on top of that because of their could have additional fees on top of that because of their performance portfolio, not necessarily your problem, but pay attention. If you're working with a lender that does all of your bottom drawer deals for you, your borrowers could be paying more than they need to be paying. Okay? And this is just to kind of reinforce what I've talked about, who you work with, who you don't work with. This is the tip I was going to give you. And does anybody know what the law of the vital few is?
Like the 80-20, well, there you go.
There you go, the Pareto principle. So, where do you want to spend your time is going to dictate a lot about how productive you are, how much business you're going to actually be able to do. So you want to spend 20% of your time with the people that have low credit scores, not 80%. The problem you find is people with low credit scores want to take up 80% of your time. So keep this in mind. Get them off your plate, put them in your CRM. You all have that, right? Okay? So some kind of drip marketing campaign, so you keep your name and face in front of them, send them to the loan officer, let the loan officer help them figure that out, and move on to the next buyer. If you keep that in mind, you will do a whole lot better. As a matter of fact, the people with high credit scores don't usually take up 80% of your time. So how many more are you going to be able to work with if you pay attention to that? Any other questions now? I'm kind of opening the floor for questions at this point.
I have one other question.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Back on that JCPenney's 30-year, you've had that account and you close it.
Mm-hmm.
You said that our credit reports, all that stuff stays on there forever.
Mm-hmm.
So you, as the lender, you do see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's back there. I mean, it's closed, but it's back there. It just doesn't go into the scoring.
That's correct. If it's either closed or inactive, it is not calculated into the scoring model.
But you can kind of use that
For nothing.
For nothing?
Nope.
You don't pay any attention to
Absolutely not. Other than I can counsel them if it's just because they haven't used it, I can say go use it.
Mm-hmm. But it wouldn't help you in making a decision of any kind.
Not really, particularly if it's closed.
Okay.
No, because you know what our decision's based on?
Active.
The credit score.
current, yeah.
It's based on the credit score, and then from the credit score, we look at what's in the report. Because there are people that will have a 740 credit score, but they filed bankruptcy 18 months ago. Okay, well, we can't do that loan, right? Or they had a foreclosure 2.5 years ago, and they just happen to manage their credit really, really well. Very common on the East and West Coast for people to walk in the 2008, 9, 10, to walk away from their home and keep their BMW. Why? I speak to California law specifically. There is no deficiency judgment laws in California. So if a borrower walks away from their home, let's say they paid $500,000 for it, they walk away, the lender sells it for $200,000. In Texas, they can go after them for the $300,000 loss, right? In California, they can't. If it was purchase money loan and some other particulars, they can't go after them. So the borrower is not on the hook for anything. So many people in California walked away from their homes. Some of them were very strategic and went and bought another home first at the lower price. But if they weren't, they at least maintained their credit cards, they paid their BMW payment, they did everything else perfectly, so they have great credit scores. So we get a lot of people that have obviously moved to Texas from California, and we have to be careful because we pull their credit report, they got a great credit score, but if you look further down, oh, there's a foreclosure there that's only 2 years old. That's a problem.
Right.
So we do look at the line items, but we're looking for the negative line items really more than anything. A positive line item that's not in their credit score is doing them nor us any good. Okay? Good question, though. Thank you. Any other questions?
Are medical bills kind of the same as like consumer good bills? Like, you know, if somebody had a large medical debt, you know, due to, you know, an accident or something like that, is that considered and scored the same as like credit card debt?
I'm going to say that it generally is scored the same. That's a very good question. I'll need to look a little deeper in that. It has been scored the same in the past, but medical collections are looked at a little bit differently from a lending perspective. There's a little more grace for those, particularly we might need a letter of explanation to see what's going on. The other thing that happens is medical collections. There are some smaller. This is going away, but there are smaller doctors, dentists, orthodontist office that they use a billing service that just happens to be what they really are as a collection service. And so let's say you go and get some dental work done and that's going to be billed out to the insurance and they're waiting for payment from you for the difference. It ends up showing as a collection, but the minute you pay their billing service, which is a collection company, it comes off your credit. They remove it from your credit bureau. We know those kinds of things happen, particularly with the smaller doctor's offices and dental offices. So it wouldn't surprise me that it's looked at, but I can't tell you unequivocally that it is looked at different in the scoring model. It's looked at differently in the lending side. There's a little more grace extended for that. Now, if you have a medical collections, 3 or 4 medical collections every year for the last 10 years, we're really going to have trouble believing your story. You're just trying to skate on paying your bill, probably. Again, exceptions to that. Some insurance companies are really bad about paying claims. Been with the same company 10 years, same problem all the time. There can be a way to explain it away.
Well, and some medical charges are bogus. My
Yes.
wife had a
Some
two-hour
are not.
procedure outpatient and got a $22,000 bill. Went in the next week for a follow-up with the doctor, 30 minutes, $1,500. I mean, just completely
Right.
bogus.
Yeah. So there is definitely ways to explain it, ways to document. But again, if you got the borrower who can't document, can't explain it, doesn't have any of their paperwork, you really start to run into some problems. And there is a dollar limit. I believe it's $1,000. If it's more than $1,000 in collections, medical or otherwise, we might need some more information depending on the kind of loan they're getting. So, does that help a little bit?
Yeah,
But that's a great question.
I have a client that, he got into a motorcycle wreck 4 years ago, and he went into the emergency room, and he's got a $30,000 medical emergency bill.
Uh-huh.
And he can't pay the whole thing and stuff, and it hangs over him. And I just told him, well, we really need to talk to a lender to find out, what they can do about that, because.
And he didn't have any insurance at the time?
No, I don't think he did. The insurance didn't cover it.
Okay. I've had 2 traumatic emergency room situations, one with my daughter, and this has all happened in the last 5 years, and one with my wife earlier this year. So I know exactly what those bills look like and how it can happen. They were $25,000 plus. But I also know that they discounted them and they made payment arrangements with me. So when somebody ignores it, it's really, empathy is not high on my personal list of strengths anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they've ignored it and they're not doing anything about it, I have trouble being empathetic with them because I've been there. I've been dealing with that. My daughter was in 2012 and my wife was this year. So it stinks to have to pay the differences. My wife has pretty good insurance. They did discount the bill and they made payment arrangements. Payment arrangements like, well, what do you want to pay, Mr. Plan? $100 a month? That works. I mean, they didn't make it difficult on me.
Right.
Now, I can pay more and I can pay it off sooner. They would love to see that, but they just expect a minimum payment. I think it's $147 a month. So they'll work with him if he'll work with them and make arrangements.
Yeah, I have to talk to him and find out, but I just wondered, because medical bills, some people, it's hard to go to the hospital or a doctor today and not end up with a huge medical bill for, services that don't seem like they should cost that much.
I agree with you. So, but the biggest thing is they need to read their mail and they need to communicate with people.
Right.
If they'll do that, they're responsible, no matter how tedious it is. If they'll be responsible with it, many times it will come out. And if it's beyond their control and there's just no way they can deal with it, maybe they need to be talking to a bankruptcy attorney to get it taken care of. So that I've seen people go through that too, where they're $50,000, $80,000, $100,000 dealing with cancer. Insurance stops paying for stuff because they have lifetime limits on what they'll pay, and they're put into bankruptcy because they can't do anything with the collections hanging over their head. They can't function and continue to move through life and make any financial progress. So sometimes that's their solution. $30,000 bill, probably not the case. There's probably a way to get that worked out.
Right.
Okay. But if they're making $8 an hour, maybe 30,000. Somebody make $8 an hour, $30,000 is a whole lot. It's like somebody making twice. put it as a ratio, as a percentage of their income, and it puts it in a different perspective. If it's a way beyond their annual income, maybe they, at 30,000, maybe they do need to file bankruptcy. Something I've always kind of not understood about people is they go by, we're talking about ratio to their income, and their annual income is $50,000, and they buy an $80,000 SUV. I'm really not sure how that thought process works, and then they wonder why they can't buy a house. Okay, you can buy a house for $80,000 in Houston, so what are you doing buying an SUV and spending that on it? But it just depends on the individual as to what the recommendation might be. Okay? Good question, thanks. Any other questions?
Great job, Daniel.
All right, we're good then.